time the Republicans were in power, many people were saying we gotta defend whatever we have. When Democrats got in power, they were telling us we gotta wait and pass comprehensive immigration reform, which we know we needed. But we also know it's not easy to pass it, that sometimes you don't even know who's your friend when it comes to that conversation. And that's how, for the last 30 more years, we haven't seen a real comprehensive immigration reform.
Is made possible by funding from Comcast and is produced in partnership with Around Town is made possible by funding from Comcast and is produced in partnership with Boston Neighborhood Network.
What?
Hello, I'm Lindsay Briggs. This is a Boston Neighborhood Network production. Due to an FCC ruling, programs like these and access to stations like BNN are in jeopardy. For more information on ways you can help, please visit bnnmedia.org.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on Boston Neighborhood Network's special edition of Around Town. This special edition is on the subject of temporary protected status, or TPS. And I want to thank Emily and Jared Wright for running the Zoom, and Ashley Lewis, who is the studio manager here at Boston Neighborhood Network, who is streaming this live. I'm going to go around and introduce our panel first, starting with Jose Palma, who was the former chairperson, hi Jose, of the National TPS Alliance. Thank you for joining us. Next, I want to introduce Krista Ramos and her mother, Cristina Morales. Krista is a high school junior, busily getting ready to apply for schools, and in her spare time is the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit of Ramos v. Nielsen. The Ramos is Krista, hi Krista, and the Nielsen is Kirsten Nielsen, the former Secretary of the Interior of the United States. Her mom, Christina, is there with her. Next, we have Trisha. Trisha is a more recent immigrant from Haiti. Was a woman of many accomplishments, one of which is 2 years old and is named Dion and is her son. And I think that's a fantastic accomplishment for anyone, among other things. Another sort of person I regard as my true brother, because he's an entrepreneur and a filmmaker in Boston, is Kenny Azie. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of video, and I can say with considerable assurance that Kenny's stuff is really good. It's really, really good. Someone who's got great accomplishments, which I am completely unqualified to speak about, really, is soon to be Dr. Larissa La Forest, whose studies for a PhD at the University of Florida I interrupted in our last phone call. While she was studying for her PhD in plant, molecular, and cellular biology, I believe, at the University of Florida. So another very accomplished person. And last, but the first person I met in my experience with TPS is Angela Palma, Angie, who was rehearsing for a play called The Last Dream when I met her. I think she was a 7th grader. She was in middle school. And she and a group of people she knew, some of whom were lifelong friends, she recounted sharing I think a stroller with at some point when they were infants, were rehearsing this play, The Last Dream. So with that, I'd like to go back, and that was 3 years ago when I first learned anything about TPS. But in about 3 minutes, maybe, Jose can give us a little primer on TPS, certainly shorter than my 3-year course of study here. Hi, Jose.
Hi, Steve. Thank you very much for the invitation. Also, thank you very much to everyone who's joining us tonight. So let's start by explaining who am I very briefly. I'm Jose. I'm originally from El Salvador. I have been in the US for the last 23 years, came in 1998, and I have been protected by TPS for the last 21 years. So many people across the country have been hearing about TPS and maybe asking themselves, what is TPS? TPS stands for Temporary Protected Status. It's a temporary immigration status provided to nationals of certain countries experiencing problems that make it difficult or unsafe for those people to return to their country. TPS is a program that everyone protected by, it has to be renewing, registering to the program every year or every year and a half. And that means paying fees for the application, going through a background check, and also fulfilling all the requirements that everyone else have to fulfill. So as we probably, and people probably already know, there are about 400,000 people protected by TPS, with more or less the number of 250,000 US citizen kids born from TPS parents. They may be asking, why are we talking about this right now? It's pretty simple. During the Trump administration, one of the things that the administration was trying to do, it was trying to take away temporary protected status from people that have been here in the United States protected for many years, like Hondurans and Nicaraguans have been protected by TPS for 23 years. So TPS community decided to get organized and start advocating to say, look, I have been contributing to the United States. I am part of the communities where I live. So why do you want me to kick me out? And instead, there should be an opportunity for me to apply for something that is more permanent and that will be better for not only for the TPS families, but also for the United States. As people will see and hear tonight, there are different stories. I think throughout the years that we have been living in the United States, we have created roots to our communities and contributed not only by paying our taxes and raising the new US citizen generation that will continue keeping this country the way it is and maybe even making even better, but also some of us also contributing to the communities where we live. For example, in my case, volunteering as soccer coach, being a board member of the health center that see for the health of everyone in the city where I live. So I can go on and on, but today's show is actually going to provide the opportunity to hear some stories and also to pretty much explain why TPS not only should continue, but TPS community should be given the opportunity to apply for permanent residency. Steve, so I think this is kind of like a very briefly what the TPS is. And throughout the show, I think we will be providing some examples. And at the end, we can talk about what people can do to support this community nowadays, Steve.
Thank you. So we're going to go to next to something that's happening currently in the United States, which is a lawsuit which has been taken up by the ACLU and on behalf of Krista Ramos, who is suing with the ACLU, the former Secretary of the Interior, Homeland Security, rather, Kristen Nielsen. So I think that my sense is, I believe that that Jared and Emily are having trouble playing the role in. So I think we'll go right to Krista Ramos and Christina and see, Krista, if you could tell us a little bit about how this lawsuit came to be and what is happening with that.
So the lawsuit was placed in 2018.
So
Well,
actually, they can't play.
that's terminated, and it was filed by ACLU, Andalan, and Catering from Los Angeles. And in this lawsuit, there are 9 TPS recipients and 5 U.S. citizen children, including me. I'm the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit, and as a lead plaintiff in the lawsuit, I'm showing the when we filed it, we showed the previous administration that they were violating our rights by ending TPS because they wanted us to choose between our parents or our country. Um, in my case, my mom is a TPS recipient from El Salvador. I have never visited El Salvador. The United States has been my home my entire life. And so I joined the lawsuit to fight for my family and also to represent over 250,000 US citizen children that are in the same situation as my brother and I, where we don't know if we can be separated from our parents.
Unmute yourself. I've got to unmute myself. Okay, so yeah, like do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so if you could unmute yourself, Angela, and talk a little bit about what it's been like to be the child of someone who is being threatened with deportation and trying to do what you can do to save your family as a young person in this country.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people mention TPS, it goes straight to the adults that will be affected, the TPS recipients. But I think it's very important to note that these TPS recipients that came 20 years ago have started families and they've had children, which are now US citizens. And I think that being a child of a TPS recipient it's very scary, and you don't really know what's coming being a child, and having the fear of your parents being taken away is also something that it's a burden for you every single day. Going to school, doing sports, you're not going to know if your parents are going to be there for your high school graduation next year. And so I think it's very important to get our perspective out there, but also empower our parents too, and all the other TPS recipients.
So we're having some trouble with the video, but I'm going to move on and see if we can talk a little bit about the production of The Last Dream. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, about how the play came to being and what you were doing and how you used that to fight for your parents, differently from the lawsuit that Krista has?
Yeah, so The Last Dream was a play created by children of TPS recipients. And so, like I was just saying, when TPS is brought up, a lot of times it's just, straight to the adults, the TPS recipients. And so the point of the play is kind of to get the children of TPS perspective out there. And the reason we decided to do a play is to kind of include art into this journey. Using art brings out a lot of feelings and a lot of vulnerability. And I think that's something that we really need to get out there. Like the lawsuit, it's something through paper and we're going to hand it to the senators and the Congress people. But I think through art and through this play, we're not only getting to their heads, but we can get into their hearts too and their feelings. And that's very important as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So thanks for that. We're gonna have to work through this with the videos as we go because we're having some kind of problems with it. I don't understand what they are, to tell you the truth. So I know that among the people on this show is not only the children who've been working to protect their parents, but also Jose and others have been working with Radio Jornalera. Could you tell us a little bit about what Radio Jornalera is and how it's sort of become the voice for this community in Massachusetts?
So Steve, the TPS community has been using every tool available to protect our families and to protect the communities and help the communities where we live. And we have been using different tools. We have been organizing, building communities across the country, and using the law to protect our family. But also, we have been also creating our own way of communicating to each other and making sure people have access to the information they need in order to know what's going on, and also to know what they can do, and also to kind of like also learn from our own experiences that when you get together, you can change things to improve people's life. So Radio Jornalera is our own way of communicating with our community. For right now, is mostly broadcasting by Facebook Live and YouTube. But the beauty about this is that the shows are led by people with TPS and immigrants ourselves. And also people are responding very well because people really are looking for to get the right information and the information they need. So it's a project that is ongoing, growing, and the beauty is that is getting a very well received within the community as a way to communicate, really an important information.
Thank you very much. So I think we have the clip from the last dream, which is working for Emily. So if you could play that, we'll take a look at what those people had to say back then when we first ran into you at the El Salvadoran Embassy in East Boston. So Emily, if you could play the clip, we'll talk on the other side. Thank you.
You may have heard of this temporary protected status, a term that you'll be hearing a lot more of in the coming years. Today, 200,000 immigrants from El Salvador are being told that after 16 years, their time is up. In many cases, they'd have to return with their U.S.-born children who are actually citizens of the United States.
They are not required to take the children with them as U.S. citizens. The children are allowed to stay here, but families don't want to be separated. People often feel like they have no choice, and to the extent they do have a choice, it's pretty draconian. Leave your children and abandon them, or take them back with you to a country that you don't want them to go to.
So as soon as I found out the news that they might be canceling, I got really worried. So I basically spent every single moment I can with him. Just helping him around the house, doing anything just to spend time with him.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Brian. Does anybody else want to share a couple of things? What are the conversations you guys have with your parents at home? Or what are the things that you're worried about?
Some conversations we have with my parents is that I will have to be staying here and possibly moving in with my youngest aunt. She's 23, I think, and she's a citizen. So I'll probably have to move in with her and with my 2 siblings and 1 on the way. My mom is now 7 months, so she's pretty soon going to have my other brother. And she just says that there's technically no life in El Salvador. I wouldn't have the best education I would be getting here. But either way, if I were to be taking school here, I wouldn't have that support of a parent that I would usually always have. So it would be really hard for me and my family, because we're all attached to my parents, especially my 2 younger brothers. And recently I've been fighting with my parents a lot about very certain things. And it kind of just what if at one point we do get separated? What will happen? And I don't want to end up getting separated in a bad place. In general, I don't want to be separated from my family. So that's what scares me the most. And those are the type of conversations we usually have with my parents. I'm going to have to be staying here because it's very dangerous in El Salvador.
Thank you. Sophia, I remember you shared a story with us, or a wish to see the president and ask him a question. Do you remember that wish?
Yes, I would tell the president if I would meet him that did he have to worry that his parents, your parents were going to be sent away just when you were just 9? Did you have to worry that you might not be able to see your parents again for a long time? Would you have to worry that you will just have to be with your sisters and have no support?
So welcome back. Thank you. So that's the story of how the last dream came into being, and that play traveled around. Can you tell us a little bit about where it went, Angela, where you went with it, and who you got to talk to as a result? You're going to have to unmute yourself there. Thank you. Yeah.
So we brought the play to a bunch of different places. We brought the play to colleges, churches, but I think one of the biggest places that we brought it was Congress. We got some Congress people to watch the play, and I think that's kind of, like I said, the most important place we've been to, just because that's kind of like the main audience that we kind of want to get to. And so it was really a big opportunity to do it, but also empowering too.
Great, thank you. So I know that another thing that you folks did, and we have a video which apparently is working for that, which is that the hunger strike in Washington, D.C. Was the occasion of a lot of action to bring this issue in front of the Congress. And in coordination with that, we had a video which has a number of the people on this panel who were making statements as to why the hunger strike was important. So Emily, if you could play that video, the statements about the hunger strike, and then we'll talk on the other side of that. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Angela Palma.
And I'm Francisca Landa Verde.
And we are daughters of TPS recipients.
Our parents are from a Central American country called El Salvador, and we were both born in the United States and currently are living in Massachusetts.
Permanent residency is important to us because without it, our families will be in constant fear with no hope.
2 years ago, we created a committee called the Massachusetts TPS Committee. Later on, we joined that committee alongside our parents to fight for permanent residency for all the TPS families.
My name is Lisbeth Landa Verde. I am 17 years old and the daughter of 2 TPS recipients. My parents are from El Salvador and I am from Massachusetts. Permanent residency is important for me because it ensures that my parents can stay in the country that I was born and raised in. To help protect my family, I have joined the National TPS Youth Alliance and the Massachusetts TPS Committee. Our families are not temporary.
My name is Larissa La Forest, and I'm a Haitian migrant who moved to the U.S. in 2010, looking to escape disaster. In my time here, I've had the freedom to pursue many different avenues, including my education. Today, I'm a PhD student studying plant molecular and cellular biology, aspiring to use genetics and science to feed the world. TPS has been a saving grace for me, but it's not a piece of paper that gives you it all. Without residents, people like me cannot receive aid to pursue their education. Thankfully, I was supported by generous private scholarships and worked my way through college. Should the American Dream and Promise Act pass, it would mean a lot for what I can achieve in my future. For example, I would be able to access available funds to pursue research that could help all Americans. I urge the U.S. elected bodies to protect the American dream and build a way for migrants to achieve it.
My name is Trisha. I moved to the U.S. at the age of 17 with my siblings right after the devastating earthquake that occurred in 2010. Immediately after, I joined high school as a junior, where I graduated in 2011. Unfortunately, my path was different from everyone else, with the limitation in my status. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend a four-year school, even though I was presented with opportunity to have a scholarship grant. But with the limitation in my status, I was not able to accept any of these. With that being said, I did not allow my current circumstances to determine my future in this country. I took upon myself to enroll in a community school and to be able to pay out of pocket with the support of my parents to pursue an associate degree, which I obtained and earned in 2015. I was able to make the most out of my current situation with a TPS, and that with that status comes a lot of anxiety because you don't know what tomorrow holds.
Having the status of temporary makes you feel that you don't belong in this country, even though you're working very hard, you're paying taxes, you're paying Medicaid, you're paying Social Security. You are contributing in the system. But having that temporary status makes you feel you are limited. You have an expiration date. That is the reason why I believe, TPS holders should get access to green card. There should be a process helping them receive a long-term status so they can become American citizens.
The reason why the hunger strike is so important for us is because we want the hunger strike to show everyone what is happening to TPS families and our family, but also we want to get the attention of the Senate and be able to put HR 6 onto their calendar and vote on it and all, to be able to give permanent residency to all families.
My name is Julio Perez, TPS recipient. I will leave on Friday, April 2nd, to participate in a hunger strike in Washington, D.C., organized by the National TPS Alliance. This hunger strike is an extreme action because the Biden administration has already been for 69 days, but the 400,000 TPS families continue waiting for the permanent residency. Our children are suffering the psychological struggles, and with the hunger strike, we want to tell the three powers and the governments that we demand permanent residency now, and our lives are not temporary.
Hello, and thank you for watching, and thank you for coming back. So I'd like now to go to each of the three people from Haiti whose stories were told there and see if they can expand a little bit on their own personal experience and how that has been for them. So starting with you, Trisha, could you tell us a little bit more about how you came to this country and what you've been doing since you got here?
Hi, everyone. My name is Trisha, and I've been in this country for about 11 years now. I came after the earthquake of January 2010, and that occurred in Haiti. And since then, my path has not been traditional. It's been trying to figure out how to make the best out of what I'm given. I have been able to graduate high school, thankfully, and be able to navigate my way through the college system, which is not designed for people like me, with people with TPS. What does it mean? It means that you are not able to qualify for Pell Grants. You're not able to qualify for what someone that is either a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen that is able to get certain access to funds that is available for everyone. For a TPS holder, what does it mean to go to school like me, like I've had to be able to support yourself, to go through college and hope for a better future once you attain that degree, which is what I did. I was able to enroll at North Shore Community College after high school because I was not able to get be able to receive any of my scholarship. And I graduated there with my associate degree. And I feel very fortunate to be in a position where I am today to be able to work in the pharmaceutical field, given my limited status and degree, and to be able to work in rooms where my qualifications would not have brought me there. You know, by the grace of God, I was able to attain the experience and be able to be in rooms where now I'm able to make an impact in the quality system in the biotech industry. And also my biggest accomplishment has been able to settle down, get married, and have my child. And that those stories resonated with me because that is now I had an opportunity to be at the forefront seat of what my child will have to go through in case, like, after 18 months from now, there is no permanent solution that is found.
Well, we're going to try and get a permanent solution one way or another, certainly. Don't you think?
I hope so. That is the goal. That is why we're here. So it strikes something in my heart to figure out that I am at the right place, we're at the right time, and raising our voice to show people why it is so important. And for myself, my husband and I are both a TPS recipient. We're raising an American child and navigating between two worlds and of giving them the best life, and at the same time having to deal with the anxiety daily that you don't belong, you don't know what tomorrow holds, but you have to put a front for your child for them to be raised in the safest possible environment. Going to Haiti would mean going back to a turmoil that's been happening for the past 2 years that has worsened with a government that is trying to be overthrown, with kidnapping that.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Jimmy's Decorative Moment. I am really excited for today's show because we have some great guests. Today we're going to be introducing Capers Catering. It's this really phenomenal catering company in Boston that just won Best of Boston. How marvelous is that? And that the fact that they get to be on this show, I'm so grateful. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Glenn and Janice Williams of the Rosendale Arts Alliance. Thank you so much for supporting the show in its inception and for continuing to support it. Without much further ado, I'd love to introduce our guest to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Krista.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
I'm so grateful. I know you have a huge event today that's actually just right up the street.
It is. Yeah, I know.
So the fact that you took the time out to... So tell me a little bit about yourselves. Like, tell me, you know, I know that's a loaded question, but like sort of the start of Capers Catering, Emma, like how did you start it? Why did you start it?
I actually started it because I was so passionate about everything there was to do about cooking. And I'd go into Chinatown and I'd go, you know, buy olives here and other things there, and just putting together dinner at night was so magical. And I started to think I should go to culinary school. So I did, and started Capers when I was 26.
Are you from Boston?
I'm from Providence.
Oh my goodness.
So close by.
So you would go from Providence to Chinatown here in Boston, or is there?
I lived in Boston at the time.
Oh,
with my husband.
Okay.
So we got married, and I didn't want to go to culinary school away from him, so I stayed here local.
Very cool. Oh my gosh. So where did Capers start? Like, what town did it start in? Like, do you remember the first commissary?
Okay, well, the first commissary was my kitchenette.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's how a lot of people get started.
I had a station wagon, which was great. And so my kitchenette was this size, and I did a wedding for 120.
From your kitchenette?
From my kitchenette.
Congratulations.
And my station wagon. And then I moved to Arlington, to 800 square feet in Arlington, and then we went to Stoneham.
So you never forgot the kitchenette?
Never.
Do you still have
crazy.
it? Do you still have the kitchen?
No, I was a renter. I'm sure the landlord did not know that I was like catering out of my apartment.
Do you remember your first event? Like your very first event?
My very first event was in Westwood, and it was for a friend from Providence. She was having a christening for her daughter, and that was my first event.
Oh my gosh.
And thankfully somebody believed in the dream.
No, and isn't that how it starts? Like someone believes in you, and then you just, the domino effect, and things happen. And I'm sure there's still images from that first event.
Oh, definitely.
I'm sure she still has pictures, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And just, the people that you meet, and then the people that you bring on with you to help out, be bartenders and waiters, and many of them are still with us today.
From that first event?
Not from the first event,
my gosh.
but shortly thereafter.
Wow.
Yep, our
I would
very
love
first
to meet
chef.
them. That's like a lot of history.
I know. Daphne was my very first employee, and she still works for Capers today.
Wow. Kristen, how did you get started in catering? I could talk about that forever.
Yeah, so I was a business major at UNH, and I had gone abroad. And when I came home, it was the end of May, and there were no internships left. So I'd reached out to one of my friend's older sisters who worked at the Hampshire House.
Yes.
And I was like, I know you love your job. You always talk about it. What is hospitality like? Would you ever take on an intern? So I was the Hampshire House's very first intern.
You were the Hampshire House's first ever?
Yes.
Wow.
Didn't get paid. I learned so much. I went to my first NACE meeting then at the Commandant's House with Liz Gemelli. Met John Zucco, Joe Toto. I met all of these people in the industry and stayed in touch with them so that when I was looking for a job a year later, I had all these connections and I ended up being a catering and convention assistant at the Park Plaza. So that was my first real job in the hospitality industry. I took a short hiatus after that and did some high-tech recruiting, which I hated.
Yeah.
And so I had known someone that was a bartender for Capers, and I'd reached out and said, is there any way you need extra staff on the weekends? I'd love to be a server or a bartender and just make some extra money. It was 2008 and the recession had hit, and I wasn't selling, and nobody needed a high-tech job. There were plenty of opportunities for people to find it on their own. And timing was right, and they said, we actually would, are you interested in a sales position? We'd love to bring you on as a salesperson. And I was like, absolutely, that's like what I want. And I started,
And we got so lucky.
I started 10 and a half years ago, and I've been there ever since. So, I mean.
What do you love most about your job?
I love being able to be creative and work with people and really figure out like what they want. I find that, just by talking with people, I get this sort of like sixth sense about them, and I just really like getting to know them and then matching menus and events to what they're looking for.
It's really fascinating to me. I'm sitting here with the both of you. You're both very intuitive people.
Yeah.
Like you both are very intuitive. You can read people's
I'm a
energy really
Pisces.
well. Wow. Yeah. What's your sign?
Libra.
I'm a Taurus. I'm a Taurus.
Okay.
Very stubborn. And determined. But no, that's really fascinating. I wonder, Emma, if you have attracted all these intuitive people, because even the chef who we're going to be talking to a little bit later, because he's cooking for us, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He's very intuitive too. So I feel like, I wonder if, I truly believe that the culture of a company starts from the top, and sort of that sort of creates the culture of a company and the energy of a company. So you start to attract all these people and all this good vibes. And I've never met a Capers employee that said they didn't like it
Yeah.
there. I've worked for many caterers in the past, but it's a really great vibe, and it's really a testament to you and your team and just like the energy that you're doing, and honestly that positive energy is translating into positive results. Like you're winning Best of Boston, like everyone's talking about Capers Catering, and it's a really cool thing, I have to say.
Oh, I consider myself blessed that I have so many wonderful people around me.
It is, because it takes a team,
Oh, it
and it is
does.
a blessing. You have to be super great. You can, and I can tell it. I can pick it up from you. Like you're so grateful. Like you're truly grateful for everything, and gratitude is a great multiplier. Like you bring so much into your life by just being thankful for the people who work for you, for the food that's being delivered, for the glassware, for the plates, for the stations, for everything, for the clients. It's just being grateful.
For power and water at an event site.
Exactly.
We're very grateful for electricity in a field.
Back, Emily and Jared have got the video working again, and I want to go back to an immigrant with TPS named Erasmo Ramos. The video is not gorgeous. His internet connection wasn't gorgeous, but what he has contributed to this country is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
So, so I don't know. Someone's mic is on here. If you, Emily, could roll a video of Erasmo and just learn what this man has contributed in spite of having TPS. You said you had something like 200 people who work for you in this in Presbyterian Hospital, something close around that number?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and
around 250 employees.
it's so great. And are a number of those people, do they have TPS also, or are most of them American citizens?
Yes, I have like a few then who has TPS. So
Yeah.
a few of them, yes, but not all of them.
Right, of course, right. Can you describe for the audience what it's been like during COVID? I mean, it must have been a very hard time in the hospital, and you must have had people who got sick who worked for you and so on.
Yes, it was an unforgettable experience, especially when we experienced the first cases. We have to remember that it was an unknown pandemic, so everybody was afraid, including myself. So it was a challenging moment because we wanted to provide the services, but at the same time we have the resistance from the employee because it was it was an unknown pandemic, so they were afraid to go to the patient rooms. But also we experienced that a lot of people got sick and they have to be out for many weeks and months. Coworkers who didn't return to work yet, that they passed away. Yeah, I think that was one of the huge challenges that I believe as a manager faced during the pandemic, especially during the I think it was March and April. It was the epicenter of the pandemic of the COVID-19 in New York. It was perhaps one of the most challenging moments as a manager and as a person in my and I think in my life.
Thank you. I mean, isn't that an astonishing story? So here's a guy who is running the entire housekeeping operation for a major hospital in Manhattan, 250 employees. They're doing all of the housekeeping. They're taking care of food service and linens and waste and making the beds and doing all of this and keeping people alive in New York City. And the government decides it wants to deport this man. So it seems to me that there are really two streams here. And one is justice. And it seems to me pretty obvious that anyone who has any real concern for justice understands what that should mean. It should mean that everyone here should be granted permanent residency simply on that basis. But the other issue, I believe, is an issue of pragmatism. Think about what Erasmo Ramos contributed during the crisis in New York City when, as he put it, that city was the global epicenter of a pandemic that's killed millions of people around the world. And here's a guy who is making sure that people get medical care and that they can stay alive, even though members of his staff, some of whom have temporary protected status, are getting sick and dying in the effort to save their fellow American residents. For me, it's simply astonishing. So I'd like to go back to the interview at Radio Jornalera that we weren't able to play before, which happened at that station, which is not just a radio station, but a television station, in which another Jose Arias and Doris Landa Verde, I believe, interviewed U.S. Representative Lori Trahan, and she talks about her family's background as immigrants. And so we can come back on the other side of that. Thank you.
First of all, I'm the granddaughter of Portuguese and Brazilian immigrants. I'm Lori Loureiro Trahan. My grandmother worked in the same building as a mill girl that houses my Massachusetts congressional office, which tells you everything you need to know about the potential of our country and our immigrants.
We have a question for you. We know there was a meeting with President Biden and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Yes, thank you. And can you share with us what happened in that meeting?
The conversation ranged from the implementation of the American Rescue Plan, which included robust funding to ensure that Spanish-speaking communities have access to vaccines and healthcare for the duration of the pandemic, to immigration, and to the president's newly unveiled American Jobs Plan, which will get folks back to work as we continue the hard work of defeating COVID-19 and reopening our economy.
How is the possibility to add in HR 6 into the appropriation conversation?
Well, I'll start by saying that I couldn't be more thrilled to be able to join you after we just passed HR 6, the American Dream and Promise Act, in the House last month. I know many of you have been following this, but just so you know, HR 6 provides relief to Dreamers, as well as temporary protected status, TPS, and deferred enforced departure, our DED holders, who fled ongoing armed conflict and other extraordinary conditions to come to this country and who have been contributing to the American economy and communities they call home for years, and are employed at high rates in industries that often struggle to find sufficient U.S. workers. I'm committed to seeing this bill through to the finish line. I'm proud to be able to report that President Biden agrees with that sentiment, which is why the White House has endorsed passage of this long overdue legislation. In terms of how we do that, we're still working with leadership in the Senate to determine the best path forward. But as we come to a solution, I will keep you updated. We're ready to use all levers.
So that was Representative Trahan talking about her background as immigrants and, of course, the value that immigrants have brought. But we also need to move on to the political action that we can all do to try to solve this problem in the real world. Obviously, immigrants have enormous value and have contributed, of course, to this society in every way. So I would like to move on to the roll-in that we have with another U.S. Representative, Jim Mcgovern, who talks about the role that political action can play, and we'll roll that and talk about it when it's finished. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Congressman Jim Mcgovern, and I just want to say how inspired I am by the National TPS Alliance and the Massachusetts TPS Committee, how courageous I think you all are, and how I wish I could be with you in person to stand in solidarity as we fight for justice for TPS holders. I want you to know that you're not alone. I and millions of others stand with you and support you. My good friend John Lewis used to say to all of us, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." And that's what you're doing. I look forward to seeing you all soon. And in the meantime, stay safe and keep making good trouble.
So we're going to try to make good trouble, I guess. Jose, can you talk to us a little bit about where the good trouble is at this point in our national process, in the Congress, in the courts, and so on?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think, because of the good trouble and the many supporters across the country is the reason why we can continue saying, we are in our community, we haven't been removed from our kids. So the campaign continue, as maybe we will hear at the end, but as everyone knows, the case that is protecting more than 300,000 people with TPS, which is well known as Ramos versus Nielsen, even though now it's changing to Ramos versus Wolf, I believe. That case is the one that is protecting people, as Larissa was mentioning, to October 4th. If nothing happened between now and October 4th, people will lose their immigration status and most likely can get put in deportation procedure. Also, Steve, I think tonight people have had the opportunity to hear stories. I hope they have been touched by the stories and motivated by what people are doing in our communities and their communities, and we hope people will take action. So when it comes to the legal area, I think Cristina can maybe explain a little bit more. But the reality is we are waiting for the Biden administration to respond to the lawsuit. So that's something there. But when it comes to the legislation, is the part where people can really, if they feel motivated, they can do something. In the next few weeks, Congress will be talking about this new job recovery package that they are trying to pass. Many people are talking about reconciliation conversation. This is something where we hope Dream and Promise Act can be included, and finally people with TPS can get permanent residency. What people can do easily, if they want to go, if they want to join and do a good trouble, as Congressman Mcgovern was saying, people can call their senators and ask them and demand them to include Dream and Promise Act. I think that's kind of like the easy way. The other way they can support is if they know of committees across in their cities, they can also support those committees. But the most important thing right now is for the Democratic Party to finally understand that the people in the United States are demanding them to take action. And I know there are conversations in trying to do a bipartisan conversation and trying to move a legislation. The reality is that what we have seen is the country getting divided, even more and more politically talking. And I think people should be asking Democrats, yes, to try bipartisan conversation, but yes, also not use it as an excuse for them not to do something. And if they need to move forward, they should. So I think it's something, Steve, we have learned throughout the pandemic is that when something like the pandemic hit a country, everyone needs each other. People who are U.S. citizens need undocumented immigrants, people with TPS, with DACA. At the end of the day, we become a community where we all need each other. Like I am sure Erasmo and his crew saved many people's lives. And I am sure they were not asking, are you a U.S. citizen or are you undocumented? They were just doing the job and trying to make sure everyone is safe. Same thing I do when I am coaching my soccer classes. I'm not asking the kids, are you a TPS recipient, are you a citizen? I just want the kids to learn soccer in order for them to do some sport and eventually, continue being a good U.S. citizen kid. So I hope, people who are watching tonight will make that phone call to Congress, especially to senators, and demand them to move and include Dream and Promise Act in the next conversation. So I will probably ask everyone to do that.
Thank you. Thanks very much. What do we all think here about the issue about the whole problem of getting things through the Congress without Republican support and the filibuster? Is that something that you are ready to urge people to do now, or do you want to wait? Or what's the political cause here that we have to take? I know that there's TPS, and then there's the whole much larger issue of immigration as a whole, which is pending. So if we're not going to get Republican support, what do you ask that people do?
So the conversation has been, Steve, that the conversation throughout for many years and decades has been when Republicans are in power, sometimes Democrats say, let's defend and protect people as many we can. And then when Democrats get in power, they say we need to get comprehensive immigration reform. But 30 years later, nothing has happened. And instead, we were at risk of losing 400,000 people protected for the last range between 20-something years to at least 5. So what we are saying is like, look, yes, we need something that will protect everyone. Yes, it should pass bipartisan. Everyone should be involved in the conversation. And at the end of the day, what we say is like TPS recipients have been crossing a nightmare during the Trump administration. We don't want to go back to that same situation. And that's why what we are asking Democrats, the Biden administration, and our supporters is to agree with us that we need permanent residency. What vehicles they use to pass the legislation, that's up to what can happen in Congress. We would like to see a bipartisan conversation, but if something needs to happen by the Democrats taking leadership and really showing that this time they are serious and committed to make it happen, we are fine with it. Because at the end of the day, what we need is not words and promise. We need action and reality. With promise, we have been U.S. citizens for the last many, many years. But you know what? I was afraid that I was close to lose my immigration status. So how they do it, that's fine. And that's to the political strategy within Congress. What we need is permanent residency. And that's what we hope you all will make the phone call and ask legislators to do it.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to go back around our virtual room here and start with Azie, who was last before, but now she'll be first. And just say, if you have some final words, if you have thoughts about what you hope people, your friends, their parents, what you think people can actually do to try to move something forward, whether it's a total immigration package, whether it's TPS, what is it? And I don't want to get you in trouble with your dad either. But he won't listen, right? So you can say anything you want.
Yeah, now that people are more informed with what TPS is, I hope that they continue supporting TPS. TPS has a website as well. It's National TPS Alliance, I think. And so kind of just like keep finding out what TPS is, stay updated, and tell your friends and family as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks again. If we go back then to Larissa, what do you have to say? And I'm going to cheat, Dr. La Forest. What do you have to say?
Well, I would like to say, in keeping with Angela's message, stay informed. And if you'd like to feel the urgency that we feel as a community, check uscis.com/TPS every day and call your representatives and make that page change for the better. Keep in touch with the community because we are a very tight-knit community, like Jose said, and just do what you can. Don't participate in inaction. And that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Kenny, do you have a last word for our viewers and for each other? We can always root for each other, right?
Absolutely, Steve. And there are two words that comes to mind when it comes to closing here. It's tolerance and action. For the people watching, the viewers, to understand that whoever who has TPS, they're working hard in this country. They are contributing to the economy. Not having those people removed from the economical system can lead to billions, over approximately $200 billion lost. So that means it's going to be a lose-lose situation.
Spend weekends with the girls. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to brunching.